No, I was in doing a comedy show years ago in Reno at a casino in Reno, Nevada. And cell phones were just coming out. And partway through the first show, a guy in the front row's cell phone went off. He answers it, and he proceeds to talk over me, all right? Loudly. And I'm joking around. Finally, after 10 minutes of this, I just snapped. And I went nuts and started yelling at him. And I got him out of the showroom, but it was really hard to get back into being funny. So I finished up that show. I did a second show that went great. Next day, I'm walking across the casino floor, and there's a group, and they're like, "Hey, there's our comedian. You were really funny." And I said, "Oh, yeah? Which show did you see?" The guy looks at me, he goes, "You know." Ooh, you saw the bad one. Okay.
Years ago, I was working at the DC Improv, which was kind of my home club where I pretty much started out in comedy. Now, I was the feature act for a big-name comedian, John Pinette. John is hilarious. He's been on all sorts of TV shows like Seinfeld, and he was a big, huge, important, famous headliner. The shows that week were packed, and John gave them all exactly what he promised, an hour of nonstop laughing. Yeah, the crowds really loved him, and he loved them. He just packed out the room, and he had done a door deal with the club. I don't know the details of his agreement, but usually those mean that the comedian gets all or part of the door instead of a flat fee, and the club gets the drinks and food and maybe some of the door. I figured he made a lot of money that week. And at the end of the week, he went up to me and the MC and handed us each $100. Yeah, he said he made a lot of money this week and he'd like to share it with us. That was unbelievably nice and really not expected. It also made a huge impression on me. John Pinette has since passed away, but you really should Google him, Pinnett. I've always remembered him with his hilarious comedy and his big generosity. Now, contrast John's week to a time I was working with another big headliner who I won't name. He also packed in the crowds, but what he did, instead of doing his act, which was what was advertised, was he did his new, never been seen on stage before, one-person show. Yeah, and that might have been all right, but the show was about his growing up gay, and there were parts in it that were pretty graphic. This not only turned off a lot of the audience, but it actually made them mad, because they had paid a lot more money to see this famous headliner, and they expected to see his comedy act, the one that made him famous. They didn't like the switcheroo, and within 15 minutes of his starting into his act, there was actually a line to get out of the club. Yeah, I've never seen people line up to leave a comedy club during the show, but they did. The comedian was very nice to me, and later he admitted that, maybe he shouldn't have billed it as his comedy act, and instead maybe promoted it as his never-before-seen one-person play. I'm sure he would have still packed out the place, but people would have come in with different expectations. Instead of paying to see him do some of his famous bits, they'd know that they were watching a work in progress, and they would know the subject matter in case it was something that they didn't really want to hear about. He easily could have sold it that way and made everyone happy. The takeaway tip from this is to make sure you meet and exceed people's expectations. Don't give them an old switcheroo. Yeah, trying something new like a one-person play is fine. Just make sure you've set the stage right so that people attending know what they're getting into. Springing something on people like the second comic did almost never works. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Feel free to check out my website, theworklady.com. This is Jan. Take care and enjoy your journey.